Hiya and welcome to another building history video. In this video I'm building a late Victorian, early Edwardian house. You might be wondering what the difference there is, why it's not like mid-Victorian or early Victorian. And I think in this case it's because I've built a bathroom upstairs, which is really a new idea for Victorians. Certainly in the early Victorian period there wasn't a lot of running water in houses necessarily, and the idea of getting plumbing upstairs was pretty new, so that upstairs bathroom definitely contributes to it being a later house. But on the other hand, it's not like a 1930s house, in part because of the design and the clutter, but also because of the lack of electricity. So the idea of this house is that it's gas lit. Now, you might have gas in your home and think, hey, I've got gas and we don't make lights with it, but this is coal gas. Was used in Victorian times for lighting, and yes, that means naked flames in your light, sconces in the hallway. But that's a different kind of gas to the natural oil gas that we have at the moment that you might use for like a heater or a gas stove. It's a different thing. So this is the house as I'm building it. 2-story house with a little porch at the front. The idea is it's kind of it's trying to evoke an earlier period, which was definitely a thing in Victorian times. There's a lot of Gothic revival architecture in Victorian architecture, so this is looking at that kind of medieval revival in a few of its features, but primarily just a Victorian house. And when we get to decorating, you'll definitely get the Victorian feel, I think. At the moment, I'm just trying to position upstairs so that you can get in and out of this house and get the exterior stone brick paper done. It would probably be a light brick in this case. I'm trying to decide how to fit the upstairs in. I kind of wanted to try and fit 4 bedrooms and a bathroom in, but there wasn't really enough space. And now I'm struggling trying to fit windows in the center of this wall, because of course it looks a bit weird having them on the side. Trying to get them all the same height. We need more 3-tile windows in The Sims, apart from that one. Then I have the opposite problem downstairs where I need an odd number of windows. An even number of tile windows, and there's no 4-tile windows. And at this point, I realise, no, I'm doing it the stupid way, and I should just reduce the size of the house because I've made all these rooms way bigger than they need to be. Because the other thing about Victorian houses, if you visit them, like if you visit houses of the wealthy and the fancy, then you will notice that, yes, of course, they're big and they have huge like entrance halls and libraries and stuff, but the early Victorian period is definitely about moving to the cities post the Industrial Revolution, and that means that there's a lot of really cramped housing. Even in the middle classes, you're not going to have ginormous bedrooms, you're not going to have ginormous living spaces. It's about being cozy. The other thing about the Victorian ethos is that you should have a room for every purpose and one purpose for every room. So we have a lot of open plan living these days. I certainly really like open plan living, but the Victorians would have hated open plan living. They liked having a separate dining room, a separate parlour, a separate library, a separate kitchen, a separate laundry room. They wanted to keep everything in its own space. And often those spaces were gendered as well. So you might have a ladies' sitting room and a gents', like a pool room, something like that for the men. And only really the dining room would kind of be a cross-gender space. So I haven't really tried to gender the rooms here, but I have tried to colour theme them all. So at the moment I'm just kind of putting in a generic wallpaper through them, but you'll see in a bit when I start to colour them. I also struggled to find a really good Victorian tile for the bathroom and the hallway. Definitely a tiled hallway, like I just put in, very Victorian. But there's not really a good Victorian tile, so this one is a bit 20s, 30s, I think, and not quite Victorian. Now I'm trying to decorate the kitchen. So remember, we're talking about a time or a house that doesn't have electricity. So it could have a gas stove, but I think in this case it's got a wood or coal burning stove, and a freestanding sink there, like a butler sink, which is very cool these days. And then there was a cool room, a cool box rather than an actual fridge. Upstairs, I'm trying to make this bathroom not feel so giant. A shower is not really a Victorian thing. That's a much more recent thing. But I love showers and I hate baths. And the idea of putting in a bathroom with a bath and no shower, I just couldn't cope. So I put in a shower bath. Here you can see I'm putting in the wall sconce lighting. These days you would see those things with little electric bulbs in them. Like maybe those candle bulbs that are pretty shape, but originally these kinds of lights were built for gas light. And now I'm putting in carpets over the wooden floor. I think that having fixed carpet is a pretty new thing. Lots of older houses would just have really large rugs, basically, as carpet. And now I'm making the ginormous dining room. I don't know if such a large dining room is really typical, but I like it. I think it provides a good communal space, especially given that this is a 3-bedroom home with basically sleeping space for 6 people in it. You're going to need more than just this lounge room, because this parlour only seats 5 or 6, just seats 6 people, because I squeezed that couch in the corner, and I've put in a fireplace, which is obviously fairly typical. There is no good Sims 4 fireplace that is Victorian. There is one that claims to be Victorian, but the surround is polished, and the Victorians almost always had blackened surrounds, so it just looks weird. The reason you don't have a polished surround, if you actually use your fireplace, is because it gets dirty and black. So if you have a black surround, that saves you a lot of cleaning and polishing. And these fireplaces would have been used as the main source of heat in the house, so they are getting used every day in winter and a lot of autumn and spring as well. Here I'm putting in some chandeliers. I'm trying to fit a light in that hallway, which I can't do because of the door I've chosen. I think I fixed that later. Now I'm just making sure every room has some lights in them. I think I moved them around later to fit more furniture in. Just putting some decor in the kitchen. Yes, I know a fire alarm is not Victorian. They would have just had a bell, but if they had anything at all. But you really need one in The Sims. And now I'm just trying to clutter up the dining room. If you've ever visited a house that's been preserved or recreated to be a Victorian house, one of the things that you will notice, if they've done a good job, is that it is completely packed with knickknacks. You might think, wow, my grandma has a lot of knickknacks, until you go to one of these houses and it will just be completely full, and not, fancy collectible stuff. They would have just baskets of shells and little things they'd made, paper craft and embroideries, that kind of thing, just everywhere throughout the house. Little boxes with other knickknacks in them. Sims 4 does not have a lot of that, so I feel like it's perhaps a bit light on in this build. And now I'm putting in the bedrooms. So this is the master bedroom at the front, which is kind of the new bedroom. And then we've got potentially like a children's bedroom for 2 kids, maybe a boy and a girl, maybe 2 girls, and then another bedroom, which is a bit older, which potentially could contain another 2 children, maybe 2 boys, or depending on the size of the family, perhaps they might have a live-in servant. Which I think by the end of the Victorian period, certainly by, say, the end of World War One, not a thing, doesn't happen. I think most of us today, the idea of having a live-in servant is a bit weird and creepy. But in a middle-class family in the Victorian period, it was quite common to have to employ a lower-class person and have them live in your house. Also, potentially to have someone who just comes in for the day, which I think we might think of like hiring a cleaner, or like maybe in some places you get a laundry company to come and take your clothes if you live in a big city and there's no space in your apartment for a laundry. But here, like a Victorian maid of all work is a hard job, because this is a time before washing machines, this is a time before dishwashers, this is a time before vacuum cleaners and steam mops and modern textiles, and like you have to iron everything with irons that you put on the stove to keep hot. Like, it is grueling work, and lots of people died young because of it. So, yeah, makes you realize how much of a different world that is. Yeah, and now I'm just trying to make the colours match a bit more. It's a bit hard because there's like the colour of the stairs and the foundation, there's no matching ones. I don't know why, like the understairs bit, so that's really annoying. I'm putting in a bit of a garden. I struggled with what a Victorian garden is. I feel like the Victorians were into formal gardens, but this is kind of a city house, and a city house wouldn't have really had like a pretty garden. It might have had a working garden, like some vegetables or herbs in a herb garden, and then maybe, I don't know, if you were wealthy, you might have space for a stable, or maybe in the late Victorian period, you might have a shed for a bicycle. But you're not going to have much of a yard. That's really considered a luxury. And if you think about, McMansions today, they're really optimizing on the inside space and not on the outside space. And I think Victorians felt similarly that outside space was a luxury that a lot of people really couldn't afford. It's really a thing for country houses where you might have, your pretty artificial landscape, but it's not really a thing you get much of in the city. You might get it in a town, particularly if it's a planned town. They were often keen on sort of very paternalistic planned towns where they would have a company town, and then you might have a garden space if they decided that, every home needs a herb garden sort of thing. Now I'm just looking around and checking I've put everything in. I did put a bin in. I did not put a post box.